The protagonist traveled through a plane crash, and many years later he realized that it was a world of various movies, animations, and novels. At that moment, he thought he had mastered the wealth code, until he met an old man named John Price, and only then did he realize in a cold sweat that the world was repeatedly jumping on the edge of nuclear war. I can't continue writing, actually I don't have any books to read. I'll try writing one myself. Keywords of the novel. No pop-ups for entertainment starting from the Red Sea operation. Download the complete set of entertainment TXT starting from the Red Sea operation, and read the latest chapters of entertainment starting from the Red Sea operation. Chapter 1. Opening. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Opening. Wife, it's time to board the plane. Here we go, husband, how long can we get to Sri Lanka? It seems to take over 4 hours, right? When it's time, I'm going to have a big meal. In India these days, I've been eating curry until I vomited. Oh, dear, Sri Lanka also seems to eat curry. Ah. 125, husband, I'm afraid, the plane won't have an accident, right? There was a hint of fear in the voice. No, don't worry, you can see the burning aircraft engine through the porthole. The plane began to descend rapidly, and the people in the cabin made various desperate sounds. The body of the person in their arms was trembling, and their left hand was tightly grasped. Husband, will you die this time? What should I do? Don't be afraid, I'm here. Don't be afraid to comfort me meaninglessly. He said he was going to eat lobster before, but this time he can choke. At this moment, you're still joking. Well, what can I do? I'm also very helpless. I will definitely learn a skill to fly an airplane in my next life. Even if you know how to fly a plane, what can happen in this situation? But there will be a next life, right? Well, there must be, maybe we can even travel directly through it. Will you come to find me in the next life? Yes, what if I don't remember you anymore? I will remember you. Don't backtrack. No, I will definitely find you, I swear. Explosions, screams, darkness. Su Chuan woke up from his dream, everything vividly remembered. He rubbed his forehead, sat up from the sofa, took a deep breath, and said, "Oh, wife, it's been a long time since I dreamed of you. Get up and go to the bathroom, wash your face, and look up at the person in the mirror. They don't have long hair, their cheeks are a bit thin, and their eyes are a bit red because they haven't slept well. Their appearance is a bit hard to tell their age. I've been here for over a decade now, but it still feels a bit out of place," Su Chuan muttered to himself. Coming out of the bathroom, I picked up the alarm clock at the bedside, which read 2011-0507 3.04. It was just 3 o'clock, and I actually slept for 12 hours. He turned on the TV, which was playing an Arabic drama. He watched as an American black actor played a prisoner named Sucre, introducing various people in prison to his new roommate Michael. The two of them were chatting in Arabic with Moroccan accents, and it was such a joyful scene. Thank you, if it weren't for me coming, you wouldn't have even watched the prison break. Su Chuan leaned against the bedside, facing the TV as if speaking to the whole world. I have been in this world for over a decade now, but when I woke up, I found myself an 8-year-old boy, and the time went back to 1998. At that time, lying in the hospital ward, Su Chuan could only stare blankly at the anxious but unfamiliar people around him, feeling extremely nervous. However, there was also a hint of joy in his heart. Since he could come here, could his wife also do it? Thinking of this, he almost exhausted all his rationality to prevent himself from jumping out of bed. When Su Chuan came out of the hospital, he also learned from daily information and memories in his mind how bloody the events that happened to this body were. The original owner's mother committed suicide by burning gas at home without realizing that her son was also at home. After being discovered and sent to the hospital, the original owner's mother became a vegetative due to prolonged brain hypoxia. And the original owner was rescued. Of course, it can also be said that he was not rescued, because Su Chuan, who shares the same name and surname as the original owner, is currently alive. In the following years, Su Chuan became familiar with the world while taking care of the mother of the original owner. He searched for his parents in his past life. After all, they were in the same city. He found his home in his past life during this period, but found that the people living there were not his former parents. After reaching adulthood, he continued to investigate and found that his family had become different from his great-grandfather's generation, which in turn had affected his father's generation to become completely different. However, his mother had been in her hometown in Hebei province and had never been to Jinmen city, and the family search plan had died before it even began. And the situation with his wife is similar. There is no such person at all, but Su Chuan does not want to give up because they are all on the same plane. Since he can come, it means that others can also come. Perhaps he is not the same person, and perhaps she is also searching for herself in her way. Perhaps. There are many things. Perhaps even after the popularity of the internet, he has posted some songs that both of them liked in their past lives, novels from their past lives, but there is nothing in the email used for communication except for spam messages and invitations from some music companies. I hope that time and time again, there will be disillusionment. I'm so hungry, I don't know if I can find anything to eat outside at this time, Su Chuan said to himself as he put on his clothes and inserted a HK-45T into his armpit holster. Darbeida, a famous port city in western Morocco, also has a name that is famous for a movie, Casablanca. Su Chuan walked on the street, habitually putting the hood of his clothes on his head. There were not many people on the street. After all, it was still late at night, and all the shops on both sides of the street were closed. 10 minutes later, Su Chuan reluctantly sat in a 24-hour KFC at the corner of the street, eating hamburgers that tasted completely different from those in China while looking out the window. Not far away is a white 4-story building, with bright lights inside. There are staff members walking around and working overtime. Looking at the sign at the door, it seems to be a newspaper, with several coconut trees planted in front of it. There is a small parking lot across a narrow road, where several cars are scattered. Yoho, Su Chuan, who was accustomed to observing his surroundings, looked at an unlit alley not far away and inexplicably raised a hint of vigilance. The entrance to the dark alley is very narrow. If you're not a local or don't look carefully, you won't be able to find it, let alone it's early morning. As long as you're a normal person, you wouldn't go there. So what kind of lunatic is that flickering cigarette but that doesn't sleep at night? Smoking is harmful to health, idiot. Curiosity surged, and he ate his hamburger in a few bites. He quietly took out a pistol from his pocket, covered it with a backpack, installed the silencer, opened the safety, and then put it back into the holster under his armpit. Pick up the happy water on the table and walk outside while sucking on it, trying to appear more natural. Open the zipper of the coat so that you can pull out the pistol at any time. Su Chuan walked slowly like an ordinary person who couldn't sleep at night, wandering around. As he passed by the alley, he seemed to unintentionally glance inside. A white man in his 30s leaned against the wall, smoking a cigarette in boredom. There were already several cigarette butts on the ground. Seeing someone walking by, the white man also gave Su Chuan a wary glance, then quickly threw away the cigarette in his right hand and reached towards his waist. Without hesitation, Su Chuan first threw the paper cup in his left hand and accurately hit the opponent's face. His right hand quickly took out the gun, shot twice in a row in the chest, and then raised the muzzle slightly, accurately firing his head. The entire process was extremely smooth. Fuck, Su Chuan cursed inwardly and quickly hid in the alley. After confirming that there were no other people, he kicked P226 away from the white man's hand and looked around in the darkness to make sure no one noticed. He also touched the person's pulse and said, "It's really unlucky." He grabbed the body's clothes and dragged him into the depths of the alley. End of this chapter. Chapter 2, Is This Unfortunate? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2, is this unfortunate Su Chuan took out his phone and dialed a number. Nikki, I'm at the Dalbita Center Square. I'm looking for 2 people to come over and clean up. Who knew there were so many neuroses in this world? Hanging up the phone, Su Chuan searched the deceased's body. There was no wallet, only a few pieces of Zhou Baba's change. Su Chuan put it in his pocket without a passport or identification. He picked up the P226 and looked at it. There were no signs of modification, and it was a very ordinary mass-produced model. At this moment, Su Chuan noticed the deceased's tightly held left hand and forcefully broke open his 5 fingers. In his hand was a device that looked like a car remote control key. Su Chuan picked it up and looked at it. The person who came out late at night is really not a good person. This is not a car key, but a modified wireless detonator. The remote control range of this thing is not very large, which means there should be a big firecracker nearby. I don't know who is so unlucky. This kind of bomb cannot have only one way to detonate. Even if the remote control fails, there will be other backup methods, such as car ignition, opening the car door, or timed detonation, so that old man may have to seek his own blessings. Su Chuan flipped the body over and took out a photo from his back pocket. The photo showed an Asian woman in her early 30s with short hair. This is his target. Hiss, I feel a bit familiar with her face, Su Chuan pondered while holding the photo and rummaged through his memory. Who the hell is it? Su Chuan couldn't find this person from his memory. Subconsciously, he thought it might be related to something in his past life, which didn't make Su Chuan think too long. A black box truck stopped at the entrance of the alley, and the side door opened directly facing the exit. 2 people got off the car, wearing dark blue work clothes and a mask on their heads with only their eyes exposed. Their low voices were a bit sarcastic. Boss, how many are you this time? 1, 3 bullets, 2 torso shots, 1 head shot through, look for the bullet, pointing to the bloodstains and some yellow and white tofu-like fragments on the ground. Clean up these things, they'll scare people when it's daylight. So, don't start every time, it's really troublesome to clean up. Shut up, hurry up and work, otherwise be careful of this month's bonus. He threw the remote control in his hand. Okay, someone took the remote control and looked at it in their hand. At first glance, it was CIA's technique. Su Chuan asked in confusion, can you tell that? Hee, boss, I've been dealing with them for half my life. Previously, a person was using plastic wrap to package the body, and the technique was really good. They crossed their hands on their chest and wrapped it up like a mummy. Just then, a loud explosion came from across the street. I'll take a look, hurry up, the police should be there soon. Su Chuan hid his pistol under his armpit and walked quickly out of the alley. He first observed the surroundings to make sure there were no other suspicious people, and then walked towards the nearby flames. In the parking lot, a car was almost shattered in the explosion, and a woman collapsed on the ground not far away. It's really lucky, Su Chuan thought. The bomb should be connected to the car lock, and when the vehicle unlocks, the bomb will start and delay for 10.20 seconds. It happens to be sitting in the car, and then it's gone. The deceased just now should have been a backup, on the one hand to prevent unexpected situations, and on the other hand to confirm the outcome of the mission objectives, but I don't know how this woman managed to avoid the bomb. Before dawn, there weren't many people on the street. Su Chuan took out his phone and put it in his ear, making a statement to the police. The technique is quite professional, have you met a colleague? He was thinking of rushing out of the nearby building with a few people, which was the newspaper that Su Chuan saw in KFC before. Seeing a middle-aged uncle leading the way, Su Chuan grinned and said, I just said how familiar he is. Isn't this Hua Gu? Su Chuan didn't hesitate to turn around and leave, because he probably knew the plot of the movie he encountered this time. The sound of a police siren could be heard in the distance, and the cleaning work was nearing completion. A masked man was cleaning the bloodstains on the ground with specialized detergent and said, all right, hurry up and leave. The box truck started and left the crime scene before the police car arrived. Su Chuan confirmed again if there were any omissions and walked towards the newspaper office. At the headquarters of Green Valley Energy, Deng Mei, who had not rested all night, rubbed her forehead. A pot of coffee on the table had already bottomed out, and as the representative of the Chinese side, she had been staying in the desert of the Lod region of Yemen for almost half a year. Recently, the situation in Yemen has taken a sharp turn for the worse. Although the Yemeni government army seems to still control most of the area, the news coming from within the country is that preparations for personnel evacuation are being made. "Mr. Deng, your phone number." The secretary knocked on the door and handed over Deng Mei's personal phone number. Deng Mei looked at the still ringing phone, which was an unknown number. Not many people knew this number and said, "Hello, this is Deng Mei. Who is there?" A young voice said, "Mr. Deng, I didn't disturb your work, did I?" Listening to the familiar voice, Deng Mei smiled and said, "Stinky kid, finally know to call your aunt. You busy person, how dare I disturb you? All right, I have a meeting later. If you have anything, just let me know." Deng Mei smiled and made a 5-minute gesture to the secretary outside the door. In the hotel in Casablanca, Su Chuan was on the phone flipping through the intelligence about Yemen that had just arrived. "Okay, I just learned that all 3 members of your family are in Yemen. Is it very free? China can't hold you anymore, can it? Where are you going?" Su Chuan bombarded them in a row. "What nonsense! Your uncle and I have jobs, and Xian Xian came over to pick him up for a few days because he's on vacation recently." Deng Mei didn't get angry with Su Chuan's attitude, but instead felt a hint of warmth in her heart. "Sai, you two haven't slipped away yet. Bring Xian Xian over," Su Chuan said angrily as he circled around the room. "Let me tell you, pack your luggage quickly. The flight hasn't been grounded today, so hurry up and leave now." Deng Mei felt a slight headache and said helplessly, "I also know that there is going to be a fight here. I have received a notice of evacuation, but I need to arrange for the evacuation of employees before I can leave. Xian Xian and his father are on the side of Aden, so they should still be safe." "Oh, your consciousness is quite high. Should I praise you? Xiao Chuan, you should understand that there are some things that must be done. If I run away on my own, whether the company will punish me or not, even your grandfather will kick me out of the house." Su Chuan listened to the words passing by and closed his eyes for a moment. He stopped bothering the topic and continued, "All right, then be careful yourself first. If possible, withdraw to Aden as soon as possible. By the way, does Green Valley Energy have a guy named William Boson? He has been hiding in Green Valley lately." "Yes, he can be considered as the representative of the cooperating party and has indeed been in the company recently without leaving." Deng Mei said in confusion, "Is there anything wrong?" Su Chuan thought for a moment before continuing, "It's okay, let's do this for now. Be careful of yourself these days, you should be busy first." Putting down the phone, Su Chuan was restless and couldn't tell Deng Mei that according to the plot, in a few days, you would be kidnapped and almost killed. Su Chuan has lived in the world for more than 10 years and found that the world is full of movies, TV dramas, novels, and even games. Xiao Su Chuan has known a policeman who looks like Long Brother and a special agent like Li Meiqi. The good news is that the world's bully and Batman only exist in comics and movies, and Superman does not fly everywhere. Although most of the familiar horror films have different actors, the world does not have the tendency of Cthulhu. The bad news is that an Englishman named John Price is still serving in SAS, there is an extremist named Khaled Alsd in the Middle East, and there is also a Russian named Imran, although Zakiyev's Chechen's influence is not as exaggerated as that of the old Mauzi's government in the game. Su Chuan has been worried for some time that the world war will break out when he opens his eyes. And based on experience, the real situation can sometimes be very different from the plot. This is not a movie, a stray bullet could have killed her, so we can't rely on a few navies to save her. And most importantly, behind the chaos in Yemen lies the involvement of Al-Saad and Zakhaev, who now suspects that the storyline in the game has already begun. Damn it, it's really troublesome. Su Chuan picked up the phone and found a number to dial out. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Nikita. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Nikita. United States. Amanda, do you have to wake me up at this time? Did you miss out? On the other end of the phone, a woman's voice said, the site has been cleaned up very thoroughly, and the body is missing. It should have been done by a professional. Okay, I got it, I'll take care of it. Percy hung up the phone and got up from bed. People nowadays can't even do this little thing well. How about finding out who this person is? Su Chuan looked at the person in the photo, who was the fool he accidentally killed before. No need to check, I personally entered his electronic file into the organization's system, Berkshaw said. It was also personally trained by me, Michael continued awkwardly. I think their training has been lax, so they should be able to fire at least one shot. Hey, buddy, how many assassins have you trained? It's a pity you're not an HR, Su Chuan said in silence, blocking the mineral water thrown by Michael. Alright, stop joking. I'm not sure if the purpose of the organization is related to us, said an Asian woman with long hair and big waves as she walked in from the door. Su Chuan looked at the woman who walked in and pursed his lips. Nikki, to be honest, you really should become a model. You have a lot of prospects than being a spy. Shut up, you troublemaker everywhere. It's none of my business. I just glanced at him. Would you pull out your gun just because you're being looked at? Su Chuan said angrily, turning his head to Michael. The people you've trained are so neurotic. Maybe it's not a normal person to wander around with a cola at night, no matter how you look at it, Berkshaw joked. Michael sat aside and nodded in agreement. Su Chuan made an internationally recognized gesture to the two of them. The three individuals in front of him were American defected agents who had previously worked in a department called the Organization, which was independent of the government. Even the director and commander of the CIA were unaware of the existence of this department. You guys, Nikita was speechless. Okay, no more joking. Su Chuan took out a document from his bag and threw it on the table. After waiting for a few people to flip through it, they continued, it's obvious that the killer's target is this journalist. I suspect, no, I'm sure this is Percy's private job. That's right, the situation at that time didn't match the characteristics of the organization's actions. There was no backup plan, no support, it was like a last-minute operation, and the most ridiculous thing was that the people who arrived at the scene in the first place were actually CIA people, Michael said, holding a photo taken by Su Chuan. This is too strange. Is Percy so short of money now? How much money can he earn by killing a journalist, 50,000 or 100,000? Berkshaw looked at the female journalist in the photo and said in confusion. Su Chuan took out a USB drive and threw it to Berkshaw, saying, this is what I copied from this journalist's computer. Berkshaw connected the USB drive to the computer and retrieved the files inside, which were displayed on the large screen on the wall. William Boson, a senior executive at Yemen's Green Valley Energy Company, is responsible for mining operations, including uranium mines. This journalist suspects that William Boson has been using his own channels to smuggle yellow cakes, so he has been investigating him. Of course, we all know that there is definitely more to smuggling than yellow cakes. Okay, this is not a job worth over 100,000 yuan. It depends on how much you want from 5 million yuan, Berkshaw whistled. That's not right. Now everyone knows that the civil war in Yemen has begun. Who would smuggle yellow pancakes into Yemen at this time? Iran. Nikita analyzed, Iran's path is not in Yemen. Yeah, running a batch of anti-aircraft missiles is also more profitable than this. There's no risk, it's easier to sell. Su Chuan knocked on the table and said, all right, these things are not the main focus. If you are interested, you can continue to investigate. Nikita continued, you can first check the source and transportation process of the yellow cake. I think you can ask Cuckoo. Su Chuan said nonchalantly, okay, I'll leave it to you. I'm going to Yemen tomorrow. The other three were taken aback and said, what, there's a task. There is a high possibility that Al-Sad and even Zakayev are in Yemen, they must be doing something big, Su Chuan said expressionlessly. And most importantly, my aunt's family is currently in Yemen. Berkshaw retrieved intelligence from the Yemeni side and said, that's too unfortunate. Should I help them book their flight tickets? No need, the Chinese side may soon arrange for the evacuation of overseas Chinese, they should follow along. What were you doing in the past? Because coincidentally, my aunt is also working at Green Valley Energy, Su Chuan said helplessly, and it's also time to make a deal with ALSD. The three of them looked at each other upon hearing this, and Nikita asked seriously, do you need any help? Of course, this time I need to gather everyone. I have already instructed Lu He's team to go to Sana'a to prepare. Once all the personnel are here, they will go to Djibouti and wait for my notification. Everyone. Are you sure? Well, okay, let's just forget about Dongqin. She has a month left before the college entrance examination, so let her study hard. Su Chuan thought for a moment and continued, I just wanted to ask, Berkshaw, did you blacklist the Pentagon website again? He pointed to the huge Japanese flag on the website. Oh, it's not me this time, maybe the Japanese did it, and the technique is quite clever. Believe me, I'm definitely not Japanese, Su Chuan twisted open the mineral water and took a sip. It seems Bell is planning to have a big one this time, Berkshaw said while operating the computer, it seems so. It's easy for these people to come together and mess up a small country. Michael flipped through the intelligence files on the table, Nikki, I think we need to pay attention to Bell's mental state. His persistent attitude towards taking down Al-Sad may affect his own judgment. I don't want to see him self-destruct. That's right, so I won't listen to him this time. I've already sent a message to Dongqin, asking her to come over and watch Bell. For exams and such, I think Dongqin will thank me. Nikita smiled and raised her phone in her hand. But this guy is actually going to use all the funds on the company's books this time. He doesn't want the company to go bankrupt, does he? I have a different opinion on this matter, Berkshaw looked up at the questioning eyes of the two. Before he left, he said that after completing this mission, he could upgrade my information center and do it exactly as I requested. And maybe he could also buy his own communication satellite. I have always trusted him in this regard. Impossible, I have seen your damn upgrade plan and it requires a budget of 50 million. He went crazy to agree, Michael questioned with a look on his face. Hi buddy, have you forgotten about the company's first business deal? He stole 20 million worth of goods from a Colombian drug lord, and then used these goods to impersonate sellers and crack down on drug trafficking in Mexico. In the short term, the shipping price of drugs tripled. You know, we paid nearly $10 million in costs that time, but in the end, we earned at least 200 million yuan, and it was the net profit after washing it clean. Yes, I never thought he could do this before. He even ended up shorting the Mexican stock market. And in the end, all the drugs were poured into the Gulf of Mexico, Michael added with lingering fear, so, you see, since then, I will definitely not question him in terms of making money. In Kentucky, USA, Bob Lee Swagger was enjoying his vacation with his girlfriend Sarah when a Labrador was circling around him. Sam, are you hungry again? He took out dog food from the cabinet and poured it into the basin. The phone on the table suddenly shook a few times, and Swagger picked up the message and looked at it. Helplessly, he grabbed his hair and turned to leave the room. I'm sorry, I have a job and I need to leave for a while, Swag explained to his girlfriend as he packed his things. I know, I can read it a ballistic chart, Sarah looked at her boyfriend, holding a B.ultrasound photo in her hand, hesitating whether to tell him now. At the same time, the same information spread throughout the world. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Red Sea Operation or Call of Duty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Red Sea Operation or Call of Duty. In the classrooms of the third year of high school in Huaxia capital, there are people reading books and doing exercises. Each person's desk is filled with books and exercise books, and the blackboard is written in exceptionally prominent font with a countdown to the college entrance examination of 33 days. The teacher sits in front of the podium and explains something to a certain student. The two girls in the corner looked out of place with the tense atmosphere. Although there were books on the table, there were not as many as others. One of them, with long hair, was reading a book, but anyone who paid a little attention would know that she had an entertainment magazine sandwiched between her textbooks, while the other, with short hair, was sleeping sweetly on the table. The bell rang after class, and the girl with long hair looked up. She put away her magazine and placed it inside her desk. She looked at her sleeping companion beside her, hesitating whether to wake her up. With a ding sound, the phone in her pocket shook. The girl took out her phone and glanced at it. There's a mission, Djibouti, come quickly. Ah-ha! The short-haired girl was awakened by the bell of class and stretched lazily to yawn without any image. Dong Qin, why don't you call me? The girl named Dong Qin smiled and said, Su Ziwen, what time did you go to bed yesterday? Teacher Zhang asked several times, and I said you reviewed too late and didn't sleep well yesterday. If it weren't for your consistently full marks, he would have exploded long ago. I didn't sleep at all, but we hacked the website of the Pentagon in the United States and replaced his homepage with the Japanese flag, Su Ziwen whispered with a proud expression on his face, US. Dong Qin instantly noticed her companion's words. He, netizens and netizens, Su Ziwen, who knew he had made a slip of his tongue, smirked and said, don't tell my mom, please. Dong Qin raised her eyebrows and smiled, all right, I won't tell auntie, but the college entrance examination is coming soon. I really don't want to see you fall asleep in the exam room due to your rich nightlife. Hiss, why didn't I think? Su Ziwen's eyes rolled. They've been wanting me to take the Tsinghua exam. If I had to hand in a blank paper for a course. If you want to die, you might as well give it a try, but the most likely thing is that you will have to repeat it for a year and become a joke in everyone's spare time. Dong Qin listened helplessly to her companion's nonsensical thoughts. Ah, it's undeniable that what you said makes a lot of sense. Su Ziwen gave up his idea discouraged. By the way, I'm leaving for a few days, Dong Qin said unintentionally as she packed her backpack. Su Ziwen was stunned for a moment, picked up his backpack that had not been opened for half a day, and said, why go? You just said that the college entrance examination was coming soon. I will come back as soon as possible. Su Ziwen lowered his head for a moment and asked nervously, is there anything wrong with my brother? No, you're overthinking it, Dong Qin smiled and the two of them walked out of the classroom. There's an important task, but your brother didn't plan on letting me go. It was a friend who told me privately. Okay, Su Ziwen puffed his cheeks, my brother's failure to notify you must be due to danger. Please be careful and be safe. 6 hours later, boss, I have already arrived in Sanaa, don't act rashly for now. Contact the local tribal armed forces, they are local snakes, and some things are more accurate than our intelligence. Yes, I understand, but there is something you need to decide now. What's going on? Just now, the Consulate General in Yemen called and said that due to the escalation of the conflict in Yemen, our government is preparing to evacuate overseas Chinese. The day after tomorrow, warships will enter the port of Aden, and Chinese personnel in the capital city of Sanaa and nearby cities can evacuate on their own. However, the northern cities of Yemen have become a war zone. The contact person sent earlier replied that the personnel have been contacted, but the road back to Aden is no longer passable. The Consulate General hopes that we can escort them over. How many people are there approximately? About 40 people. No problem, you can take a few domestic people to visit for better communication. Just contact the Yemeni consulate and they will say, we have a live reception, and we will charge based on the number of people. We can offer a 20% discount. Boss, it's all our own people, isn't that good? What's wrong? The fees are not good. I run a private security company, not a military agency stationed abroad by China. Don't cause trouble for me, you know. Follow the rules. The other side of the phone paused for a moment and replied, got it, boss. Also, Su Chuan thought for a moment, don't go back to Aden, just head north from the border into Saudi Arabia and let them coordinate on their own. Understood, boss, I'll call the consulate back right away. At the same time, the bridge of the 054A missile frigate LY-547, the 14th batch of escort fleets, is holding an emergency meeting. According to an emergency message from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a military coup occurred in the Republic of Yemen 5 days ago. 2 hours ago, Yemeni President Franci and several government inspectors were kidnapped by rebels. The conflict in Yemen has escalated, and the Navy has ordered our ship to immediately rush to Aden port to withdraw our overseas Chinese. Yemen Green Valley Energy Company headquarters, Mr. William, I have already paid the money. Where exactly is what I want? William Bosson held the satellite phone, and the person across from him sounded suppressing his anger. William Bosson sat on the sofa, holding a storage chip in his hand, and lowered his voice. Mr. General, I have received the money for the yellow cake and dirty bomb manufacturing technology, but you haven't paid for the things you brought in through my channels, he said. What are you talking about? I only need yellow cake and dirty bullet techniques, and the rest has nothing to do with me. Has it nothing to do with you? General, I think you should ask your partners. I'm just trying to make money, and I don't want to help you launch a nuclear war. After speaking, he ignored the answer from the other person and hung up the phone, then hid the chip in the dark compartment of the necklace he never left. Standing up from the sofa, taking a few steps back and forth, feeling uneasy, he picked up the phone and said, Anderson, haven't the government army's evacuation convoy arrived yet? Doctor, I just contacted them and they are already on their way. Got it, keep urging them. Yes, Doctor. Chinese Consulate General in Yemen, Consul He, the third batch of overseas Chinese convoys has arrived at the port smoothly, and our liaison personnel just sent a message that all the stranded Chinese personnel in the north have been contacted and are now waiting to be taken out. Consul He Qinglu let out a sigh of relief. Great, it's really hard for them, he said. Shaoli, has there been any news from Lu He's side? Lu had just contacted me and they are planning to head north into Saudi Arabia instead of returning to Aden. As long as we coordinate with the Saudi government and the receiving personnel within Saudi Arabia, they can handle the rest on their own. I see, this is also a way. As long as you can cross the conflict zone, it's actually faster than returning to Aden. They are very familiar with the local forces in Yemen and should be able to do it. However, Lu has said it's a per capita fee, with a maximum discount of 20%. He will send the invoice back later, said Shaoli helplessly. Hee, that's definitely not what Lu has said. Consul, Dr. Lu is here, said a staff member, followed by a man wearing glasses and a gentle-looking child aged 4 or 5. Dr. Lu, it's been hard on the way. Consul He, hello. Madam, why haven't we been together? She is still in the company and she said the government army will arrange a convoy to help them evacuate. How is the situation on her end? Dr. Lu looked anxious and said, don't mention it. I came out in such a hurry. I don't know where my phone was left. Consul He took out his phone and said, please contact her quickly. Dr. Lu took his phone and dialed it, and just as it rang, he answered, hello, Xiaomei. The anxious voice over there came, why haven't you been answering the phone? You're so anxious about me. Dr. Lu. Don't worry, we have already arrived at the consulate. How are you doing? Deng Mei walked to the office and said, have Xian and you both arrived? Dr. Lu. It's all here, don't worry. Let me inquire about the situation. Consul. He took the phone and said, Deng Mei, this is He Qinlu. How did you arrange it on your end? Deng Mei. The government army will come to pick us up at a temporary resettlement site and arrange for a unified evacuation. Pay attention, don't worry about anything else. The most important thing is safety. You must always keep in touch. Deng Mei hesitated for a moment and replied, I understand. I will notify you as soon as the government army arrives. Rebel Command Center, Sheriff, Dr. Williams still hasn't mentioned the location of the goods, asked a bearded man wearing a combat uniform, sunglasses, a red and white checkered scarf, and a red beret. Khalid, Wilhelm Boson said you used his channel to transport a nuclear bomb in. What do you really want to do? Or what does Zakhaev want to do? The rebel leader, General Sheriff, slammed the table hard. Of course it's for the ultimate victory. The bearded man named Khalid didn't seem to take the anger of the general in front of him, nicknamed Madman, seriously. Khalid, how much else do you have to hide from me? Zakhaev's command, you just need to execute it. This is my country. I overthrew the government because it was rotten. I want to rebuild it. I don't need Zakhaev to instruct me. Nuclear bomb, are you crazy? My nickname is Crazy, which doesn't mean I'm really crazy. He said, pushing Khalid away from him with both hands, walked out, stopped at the door and looked back. Tell Zakhaev, I'm the final say here. Then he walked out. Damn it, William Boson dares to hide the goods, said a middle-aged man with brown hair and crazy eyes in the corner. It's okay, I've already sent someone to find him. What about Sheriff? We can't let him disrupt our plan. That's right, this is an important part of the apocalypse plan and must be successful. Let Yuri find a chance to solve him. I don't know if anyone has watched it, but let me explain it. The first part is the plot of Call of Duty 4 interspersed with Operation Red Sea. I will make a big change to the plot of Operation Red Sea, and there will be no scene where the protagonist and the Dragon Assault team join forces to kill all sides. I will try to write the plot reasonably. The evacuation of Yemen happened in 2015, and this is 2011. I used the timeline of Call of Duty. The 054 ALY ship was officially commissioned in 2012, so let's consider it a parallel world Call of Duty 4. The plot here takes place in Saudi Arabia and I changed it to Yemen. I have arranged a very impressive background for the protagonist, but it is difficult to return to China due to a profession like the protagonist. Without a background, I will wait for the relevant departments to investigate every day. As for why a very impressive background wants to work in this profession, I will explain it later. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Evacuation from Yemen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Evacuation of Yemeni residents. Lod, Yemen, May 10, 2011. 23.30 Su Chuan is holding a tablet and using video function to communicate with Lu He, who has already arrived in Yemen. The picture is not particularly clear, and there is a slight delay due to signal reasons, which makes Lu He's originally handsome face appear a bit distorted. How are you preparing? The personnel have almost arrived, and I have contacted Adam's people. They are familiar with the rebels and have agreed to make way for us. They will depart early tomorrow morning, but there will be a toll fee. The consulate has agreed. We will pay for the tolls, so we must pay attention to safety and try not to conflict with other forces. However, if someone causes trouble, there is no need to be too lenient. The technology department needs your cooperation to test the new intelligent terminal you have. Understood. Stay in touch at all times. After the video call ended, Su Chuan picked up a telescope and looked at the brightly lit Green Valley Energy Company not far away. On a cargo ship loaded with containers in the Somali waters, Coco. Hekmatyar, with long silver hair, leaned against the railing of the ship's side, holding a satellite phone and saying something. Okay, I'll hurry over as soon as possible. Coco, a woman with a white bandage on her right eye, walked over, her devilish figure faintly visible under the black camisole. "Fom, let's gather together. We're going to Yemen," Cuckoo said loudly. "So, the people of Embrera are going to have a big move in Yemen," said Rem, with grey hair, holding a glass in his hand. "Yes, but compared to this matter, I am more concerned about the cargo ship that sank in the Bering Strait, the warship Bird. According to British sources, it was sunk by 2 MiG.29s, Cuckoo said with a sneer as he looked at his notebook in front of him. And before that, British SAS had forcibly boarded the ship to inspect it. Rem frowned and said, "Are the Russians crazy? Even if it's a ship of weapons and equipment, they shouldn't sink directly, right? I don't know, but it's definitely not a household appliance on top." Coco pushed away the notebook in front of her and leaned against the sofa. "I have a very bad feeling. Djibouti, the Embrera branch, is actually a huge abandoned factory building, with the entire space divided into several areas. The central position appears to be the most modern here, with several cabinets standing on the side, surrounded by more than 10 computers of various uses. Berkshaw sits in the middle position, busy with something. At the northwest corner of the factory is a living area that has been opened up, with several marching beds, a few simple metal cabinets, and an oversized long table. 7 or 8 people are gathered here, and Michael is talking to one of them." Nikita walked over and said, "I don't have time for you to reverse the time difference." He distributed the information in his hand to the crowd gathered around him. "The target of this mission is Khalid al-Sad." Nikita paused and looked at a few people. "There is no employer for this mission, and you all know that our boss has a conflict with al-Sad. His original words are that we must kill him this time. We tried before, but we couldn't find the exact location of al-Sad. This time he caused such a big deal in Yemen, it should be much easier to find his whereabouts." A middle-aged man with white hair and a height of over 190 stood up with information. "That's right, the more you do, the more mistakes you make," Michael said as he flipped through the information to show everyone. "We may have already caught his tail. William Bosson has been using his position for smuggling activities all year round, from ordinary ores to uranium mines, which are within his business scope. He has played it through this time. We contacted HCLI and Adams, and their intelligence channels have confirmed that William Bosson not only smuggled yellow cakes for a certain force, but also helped them contact sellers with dirty bomb manufacturing technology. Bell has already rushed over, and there is a high possibility that ALSD will show up for such an important transaction," Nikita added on the side. "The evacuation instructions have been issued within the Green Valley Energy Company, and all the local staff who can leave have left. Most of the remaining foreign employees are waiting for the evacuation convoy provided by the Yemeni government, and waiting is definitely the most anxious thing in the world. Mr. Deng, the things have been sorted out, but everyone is almost at their limit. If the government soldiers don't come, it will be chaotic." Deng Mei's secretary was reporting in the office in a low voice. Deng Mei rubbed her forehead and said, "I have no choice but to wait. Fortunately, our workers have been transferred to Aden before." Su Chuan was dressed in a blue cleaner uniform, which he bought from a local employee for a high price of $200. He lowered the brim of the blue baseball cap and easily infiltrated the already chaotic interior of Green Valley Energy. The exterior walls of the building were heavily made of glass, and the appearance was quite modern. The office area was not large, but it appeared relatively spacious because most people had already evacuated. Su Chuan walked calmly in the office area and saw a familiar figure approaching from afar. "Don't worry about anything else, let's leave immediately." It was William Bourne and his several bodyguards. Su Chuan thought for a moment and walked towards him face to face. As the two were intertwined, Su Chuan pretended to turn back and seemed to accidentally collide with William Boson. He quickly attached the tracker in his hand to the inside of the hem of his coat. The bodyguards quickly leaned over, and 2 of them had already placed their fingers on the trigger of the Vector submachine gun. Sorry, I didn't mean to," Su Chuan raised his hands and palms outward, indicating that he was harmless to humans and animals. Alright, don't waste any time. William Bosson didn't even look at Su Chuan in the eye, hurriedly leading his bodyguard to the elevator. Su Chuan walked around the corner and took out his phone. Berkshaw, I activated a tracker on William Bosson to keep people watching his position at all times. Okay, I understand. Also, the monitoring system has been controlled, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. From now on, there won't be your presence on the monitoring system. Just then, 2 dull shots were heard outside the building, and then the security guard shouted, "Rebels have broken in, run quickly." The whole building was boiling like an oil pan splashed with water. Su Chuan looked up from the French window and saw that an M923 truck had broken through the barricade and entered, followed by 5 pickups and trucks with dozens of armed men. MD, Su Chuan cursed inwardly. First, he put on his Bluetooth earphones and walked quickly towards Deng Mei's office not far away. A woman hurriedly ran out. Without saying a word, Su Chuan suddenly covered her mouth with his left hand, forcefully dragged the person back to the office, and kicked the door in. Deng Mei looked flustered as her secretary was dragged back by a cleaner. She instinctively picked up the phone and wanted to call the security guard. Su Chuan quickly pulled off her hat and shouted, "It's me, calm down, calm down." Xiao Chuan, Deng Mei looked at Su Chuan in surprise and walked over from behind her desk. "Why are you here?" She looked at the secretary struggling in Su Chuan's hand and said, "What are you doing? Hurry up and let go of Li Fei. She can't breathe anymore." Su Chuan looked at the woman who was already suffocating in her hand and released her hand. "Alright, don't worry about why I'm here for now. Change your high heels, take your personal belongings, and come with me." Deng Mei knew it wasn't time to speak, so she grabbed her secretary Li Fei, who was still gasping for breath, and changed into flat shoes as Su Chuan instructed. She picked up the audio items that had already been packed. "Okay, take out your phones, don't carry them with you." Su Chuan watched as the 2 of them took out their phones and placed them on the table before opening the door. He looked left and right and said, "Bend down, walk against the wall, follow me." "Aren't we going downstairs?" Li Fei, who had already taken a breath, looked at Su Chuan's route and asked, "Of course not." It wasn't too far, there was a separate small door in the corner of the office area. Su Chuan pushed the door open, and various miscellaneous items were piled up in the narrow space. 2 shelves filled with cleaning supplies blocked the entire warehouse tightly. Su Chuan pushed the 2 people to the innermost corner and let them sit on the ground. Su Chuan found a large padlock from the shelf. "Stay still here. I will lock the door from the outside. As long as you don't make a sound, even if someone finds here, it's unlikely that they will. I will open the door for inspection. I will come back to pick you up. Also, do you have any asthma or claustrophobia symptoms?" The 2 women looked at each other in confusion, shook their heads, and Su Chuan raised his eyebrows. Several gunshots rang out, and the chaotic footsteps had already arrived downstairs. "Okay, don't make a sound," he said, turning off the lights and walking out, then locking the door. "Mr. Deng, who is this?" Li Fei had the opportunity to rub her previously flushed cheeks and asked in a low voice. Deng Mei was about to answer, but when she spoke, she swallowed it back and gave Li Fei a sharp look. "Don't talk," she said. Li Fei's heart skipped a beat and she slowly lowered her head, seemingly asking the least appropriate question, feeling extremely regretful for making such a basic mistake. Su Chuan locked the door, quickly ran back to Deng Mei's office, stuffed their suitcases into the corner, and then swept the things on their desks to the ground, making them look like they were leaving in a panic. Berkshaw's voice came from his headphones, "Belle, it's best to hurry up." Su Chuan stood on the chair, pulled down the air conditioning ventilation grill above his desk, and as he was about to crawl in, his eyes seemed to scan an object before jumping down again. He picked it up from the ground and stuffed it into his pocket. The sound of footsteps grew closer and closer, and Su Chuan didn't delay any longer. He climbed into the ventilation duct with both hands and pulled the hanging ventilation grill back into place. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Do not flush water. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 6. Do not flush water. As soon as Su Chuan entered the ventilation vent, 2 armed personnel burst open the door of the office. Su Chuan took a deep breath and leaned against the thick wall of the pipeline, not daring to move. The 2 of them looked inside the room and casually put a few small items that looked valuable in their pockets before retreating. Su Chuan shook his head and took out the item he had just picked up from his pocket. Looking at the familiar shape, Su Chuan silently smiled. This was a tea knife, only 16 centimeters in length, with a leather knife cover, the blade and handle integrated into one, and the blade had feather-like patterns. This was the one Su Chuan personally made for Deng Mei 2 years ago when he knew she liked to drink pu'er. Unexpectedly, she had been using it all along. Su Chuan lay in the ventilation duct, silently praying, "I hope your structure is the same as on the blueprint, without any cutting corners." The entire ventilation system is designed to be very spacious, different from other areas. It is located in the desert, with strong lighting. If there is no strong air conditioning system, staying in this glass-filled house is not much different from suicide. Therefore, the ventilation ducts here are made of large and wide cement, and although people still cannot stand up, as long as you are careful when crawling inside, there is really no movement outside. Now the entire building is under the control of anti-government forces, and it seems that these people are also divided into several factions. Some are wearing government military uniforms and using standard M16 rifles, while others are wearing uniform black combat uniforms, tactical vests and masks, equipped with HK's G3A4 and G36C, while the majority of people are wearing different types of AKs. It is obvious that the group of people in black combat uniforms are the most well-trained among the armed personnel. They immediately controlled the surveillance, turned off the elevator, and gathered everyone in the lobby on the first floor, while other armed personnel were still running around, searching for fish that had escaped the net and scraping various valuable items. "Burkhoff, haven't they caught William Boson yet?" Su Chuan was lying down at a vent and asked in a low voice. "From here, you can see the door of the office building through the French window below." The search of each floor gradually came to an end. Most of the armed personnel were scattered outside the office building, and some Europeans and Americans were taken to cars, seemingly ready to be taken as hostages. "Bell, there's a bit of trouble now. William Boson's signal has disappeared, and it seems that the surveillance equipment was damaged when the terrorists entered the surveillance room. I can't see anything now, so be careful." "Okay, I got it," Su Chuan replied dejectedly. "These idiots," Su Chuan cursed inwardly. After more than 10 minutes, there were no more people coming up from the office area on the 4th floor, only one armed person remained to guard the stairs. Su Chuan gently opened the ventilation grill. In order to avoid making any noise, he even drew on the connecting shaft. Slow down," Su Chuan muttered to himself, slowly placing the grill panel in place. He quickly poked his head out to look at it, and then flipped it out gently from inside. Steady landing without making any sound, Su Chuan quickly hid in a nearby office. He looked left and right, picked up a ballpoint pen from the table, walked to the door, and vigorously threw it out. The ballpoint pen slammed heavily against the hanging grill, and a crisp sound echoed throughout the peaceful floor. If he couldn't hear it, he must have been deaf. The heavy footsteps sounded, and the armed personnel who stayed behind were attracted by the sound. Turning the corner, the person was caught by the still shaking grill and quickly picked up the AKMS in his hand. He aimed the muzzle at the vent and walked down to look inside. His right hand released the grip of the rifle, wanting to take out the walkie-talkie that was pinned to his waist. Su Chuan, who was hiding in the shadow of the side and rear office, was waiting for this opportunity. He rushed out like a hungry wolf, his left hand tightly covered the opponent's mouth, and the tea knife in his right hand stabbed fiercely towards the right side of his neck. Then, he stirred up and down again to ensure that his trachea and arteries were cut off. Su Chuan felt his body slowly soften in his hand, and warm blood flowed from the other person's mouth and nose into his own hand. However, even so, he did not let go of the other person. He slowly placed the person on the ground, looked left and right, and quickly dragged the body into the shadows of the office. There are no guns, no cannons. The enemy is making us, Su Chuan sang softly, searching for useful equipment from the body. He first picked up the AKMS rifle, unloaded the magazine, weighed it in his hand, opened the gun mechanism, and looked at it. Then he reinstalled the magazine and put it aside. He then removed the magazine bag from the body, combined with dim lighting, chaotic environment, and a slightly out-of-tune singing, like a perverted killer in a movie. After a moment, Su Chuan, who had finished changing clothes, walked out. He wore an old-fashioned M65 trench coat, oversized German camouflage military pants, a black headscarf covering half of his face, a DIY-style 56 chest hanging on his chest, with 3 magazines inserted inside. The walkie-talkie was inserted into the leftmost miscellaneous bag, and the AKMS folding gun stock was slanted across his body without opening. He had a Kaba 12-17 military knife hanging on his waist, and even a backpack in the office. Various sounds came from the walkie-talkie, including Arabic, local dialects, Russian, English, and some kind of language that I haven't even heard of myself. I wipe it off. Language is the bridge of human communication, and your bridge is definitely collapsed. Although his voice was very confused, Su Chuan still recognized that these people had not found William Bosson yet. Su Chuan silently pressed his forehead. But if you give me a little awesome, I don't need to kill people. After thinking about the 2 people who have been squatting in the debris room for nearly an hour, Su Chuan felt a little anxious. I hope they didn't drink water before. He took out the intelligent terminal, clicked on a function, and the signal of the tracker installed on William Bosson's body before was really missing. William Bosson is very annoyed now. He feels like he has been in this underground passage for a long time, so long that it seems like a century has passed. "Doctor, they haven't left yet," he said. This is one of his bodyguards who just ventured out to investigate. "They won't give up if they can't find me. Think of a way, they will eventually find us." William Bosson now deeply regrets why he had to wait for the government army's convoy. "Bell, I have conducted an analysis here and found that the tracker was working normally until the signal disappeared. It should be that the target is currently in an underground facility. I will send you the location where the signal disappeared, which should be the entrance. As for the monitoring equipment, it has been restarted now, but due to the lack of a password, it is not possible to view the monitoring records. Even now, these people are still there to crack the password." "Fuck, you can't expect these idiots," Su Chuan cursed inwardly. "Berkshaw, help them, but don't let these idiots discover." "Understood." Rest assured, the surveillance room was in chaos, with the bodies of 2 security guards lying in a corner. Another local person wearing a security uniform was sitting in front of the surveillance system, sweating profusely, operating recklessly with a crying voice and saying, "I'm just looking at the door, I really don't know the code." A terrorist stood behind him, holding a pistol to the back of his head and impatiently said, "There are still 10 seconds left. If you can't do it, I'll replace it. 10, 9, 8. The security guard frantically typed on the keyboard in despair, and the countdown in his ear had reached 3, 2. Just as the security guard had given up, he finally pressed the enter key, and the constantly flashing denial of access prompt on the screen had turned into a verification pass. Su Chuan opened the lock on the door of the miscellaneous room, but didn't immediately push it open. He first whispered, "It's me, don't make a sound." Then he quickly opened the door and entered the room. He gently closed the door, observing the outside through the crack and saying, "Stand up and move around, don't be too aggressive. I'll take you out first." The 2 of them, who had been here for over an hour, couldn't hide their joy. Li Fei stepped over and grabbed Su Chuan's arm tightly, her face turning red as she said, "I need to go to the bathroom." "Put your hand on my back." Su Chuan walked ahead with his AKMS, while Deng Mei and the others cautiously followed behind. When passing by the corner, Su Chuan quickly leaned out to check if there were no other people, then led the two of them through the corner and stopped in front of Deng Mei's office. He held a gun with one hand in his right hand, gently pushed the door open with his left hand, and quickly flashed in to confirm if every corner of the room was safe. Let two people enter the room, close the door, stop Li Fei who is about to rush to the bathroom, and say, "Don't flush." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Hurry up and help them. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Hurry up and help them. Xiaochuan, what's going on? Deng Mei had already calmed down. Those people shouldn't be anti-government armed, right? Don't worry, these people are coming for Wilhelm Boson. When they find someone, they will leave. Su Chuan leaned against the door, vigilantly watching outside. Deng Mei frowned and whispered, because of his smuggling business. Do you know? Su Chuan was a little surprised. Of course, we all know the details of all the middle and senior executives in the company. Su Chuan extended his thumb and said, "You guys are amazing." Su Chuan looked at Li Fei who finally came out of the bathroom and didn't pay attention to her awkward expression. "You stay here. This place has already been searched. As long as there isn't too much noise, there's a high probability that no one will come over," he said as he pushed the door and walked out. "A call from someone on the walkie-talkie, we have found the location where the target is hiding." Su Chuan checked the headscarf around his face again, picked up his gun, and ran towards the first floor. William Boson's bodyguard now regrets taking on this job. The employer only has them two left, and the other brothers don't know what's going on. Now that the terrorists have found the entrance, there's no other way but to fight. The two bodyguards left the underground passage with William Boson from another exit and are moving towards the main entrance under the cover of the shadow of the main building, in order to search for him. Most of the terrorists have been dispersed, and although there are many hostages gathered here, it is indeed the place with the least number of terrorists. Moreover, if others have not been killed yet, there is still a possibility of escape. Bell, the signal from William Boson has appeared. It seems that he has been forced out of the underground facility by those people. I saw it, and looking at their direction of movement, I think they wanted to grab the vehicles at the main entrance and escape. Xia Nan's luck is very good. Thanks to the varying levels of expertise of these terrorists, she and her assistant Bruce easily infiltrated the interior of Green Valley Energy. "Xia, we're here to investigate Wilhelm Boson." Bruce stopped Xia Nan and nervously whispered, "We're not soldiers." "I know, but we can't just sit idly by," Xia Nan said while lying behind the nearby bushes, observing the guards in front of the office building door. "Let's take a look first. If we can't save anyone, we'll still throw ourselves inside." Bruce breathed a sigh of relief as he watched Xia Nan dispel his thoughts. As he spoke, for some unknown reason, most of the armed personnel quickly entered the office building, leaving only 3 guards at the main entrance. "It seems our luck is good," Bruce whispered, knowing that he couldn't stop his partner now. Su Chuan stood behind the pillar in the corner of the hall, observing the situation on site. There were also 3 armed personnel in the hall, guarding nearly 20 hostages. Outside the gate, there were armed personnel vehicles and a Green Valley Energy business vehicle parked, with some hostages on board, and even fewer guards. Through the signal from the tracker, Su Chuan had already known that Wilhelm Boson was nearby. He whispered through his Bluetooth earphones, "Berkshaw, turn off the surveillance here." "Understood." Berkhoff, who was far away in Djibouti, typed the keyboard a few times. "All right, I've locked the entire surveillance system. They won't be able to recover in the short term." "Received," Su Chuan whispered back and walked towards the monitoring room as if nothing had happened. There was only 1 armed personnel left in the monitoring room. The security guard who had guessed the password correctly was tied up, his hands blocked, and he threw it aside. If he didn't look carefully, the monitoring screen wouldn't have changed, but it had already been locked. Su Chuan pushed open the door and looked inside first. After observing that there was only one enemy, he calmly entered the room and gently locked the door. Until now, the armed personnel had no suspicion of Su Chuan's identity except for looking back when Su Chuan entered. Standing behind the man, Su Chuan calmly pulled out the stolen military knife from his waist, leaned forward and gently and firmly covered the man's mouth with his left hand. The military knife in his right hand stabbed fiercely into his neck, ignoring his struggle. He pushed the blade forward with force. Unlike the small T-knife before, the sharp blade almost completely cut open the man's neck, the carotid artery was cut off, and warm blood spurted out like a fountain. Su Chuan threw the body aside, wiped the knife in his hand with his clothes, and turned his head to look at the security guard sitting paralyzed in the corner. His cold eyes and blood sprayed on his face almost made the young man who had narrowly escaped death wet his pants, and his mouth was blocked, making a whimpering sound. His legs unconsciously pushed back, trying to stay away from the masked person in front of him. Su Chuan walked over gently, inserted the military knife back into its sheath, looked at the tie on his hand and the sealing glue on his face that were still securely tied, opened the locked door, picked up his collar, and walked out. The sound of opening the door alarmed the armed personnel in the hall, but looking at Su Chuan dressed like them and the hostages in his hands, they all relaxed their vigilance. Su Chuan threw the security guard and the hostages in the hall together, then lifted his foot and kicked the struggling security guard fiercely, causing a commotion among the hostages. Without saying a word, Su Chuan leaned against the wall behind the hall, where all three armed personnel were in sight. Su Chuan tightened the straps on his rifle and quietly turned the safety switch to semi-automatic with his right index finger. William Bosson and his two bodyguards followed the exterior wall of the building to the main entrance, and at this moment, Xia Nan was also preparing to start rescuing the hostages. Of course, the world's plan could never keep up with the changes. The armed personnel who had been fighting for a long time finally caught up with William Bosson, and the battle that had been waiting for half a day finally broke out. Firstly, armed personnel and William Bosson's bodyguards met. It is undeniable that the Vector submachine gun, which fires 45 ACP pistol shells at a rate of 1,000 rounds per minute, is terrifying. The two bodyguards alternated shooting and successfully suppressed the chasing enemy. At the same time, Xia Nan and Bruce also electrocuted one with an electric shock, and the hostages in the car also worked together to kill one. Several bodyguards among the hostages demonstrated excellent tactical skills, using the picked-up AKM rifles and cars as cover to engage in a melee with a large number of people rushing towards them. In the fierce battle, no one noticed the eerie silence in the lobby of the office building. Without a doubt, the three armed personnel who were supposed to have rushed out when they heard gunshots were quickly knocked down by Su Chuan at the moment the gunshots rang out, and each person was shot in the head. The speed was so fast that even the hostages present did not react. Su Chuan lowered his body and crouched down, hiding from occasional stray bullets that entered the lobby. Taking out the military knife from his waist, he broke the bandage on a hostage's hand and stuffed it into his hand. He quickly said in English, "Let go of them all and find a way to hide." Then, ignoring the hostages, he picked up his gun and ran towards the rear passage of the hall. At this moment, the hostages finally reacted and didn't even wait for this person to help them untie the ties on their hands. Some of them shouted loudly and ran outside, while some clever ones saw the fierce fighting outside the door and quickly crawled behind the pillars and tables in the hall. The fierce battle outside did not last too long. Bruce finally activated the commercial vehicle, and William Bosson got on the car under the cover of his bodyguards. He and another off-road vehicle rushed straight out of the door, and the armed personnel of course did not miss the target. Most of them also jumped onto the pickup truck and chased out. The eerie silence outside the Green Valley Energy Company building fell, but the fighting inside the building did not stop. Through monitoring Su Chuan, it was found that not all of these armed personnel had entered the underground passage to pursue Wilhelm Bosen. Some of them were guarding the entrance of the passage, and through the intercom Su Chuan already knew that these people had entered the passage behind the first floor. If they could not stop the hostages in their hall, none of them might have survived. Although these people have nothing to do with him, since they do not conflict with the current goal, of course, one can save another. He stopped at a corner, quickly unloaded the magazine from his rifle, replaced it with a full one, and took out 2 M26 hand grenades from his shoulder bag. Listening to footsteps not far away, he quickly pulled out the safety pin and released the safety rod, held it in his hand for 2 seconds, and then threw it out with force. In such a passage with no rooms on either side, explosives are definitely deadly. There is no hidden place on either side of the passage. After 2 explosions, the entire passage is only left with a scream. Su Chuan slowly leaned against the wall and poked out the muzzle, revealing only one eye along the corner of the wall to look at the passage. There were about 7 people lying on the ground, 2 of whom were groaning against the wall. Su Chuan was not polite, and first 2 shots shot the heads of 2 wounded soldiers, 2 more shots were given to each person lying on the ground, and after completing these, they cautiously walked out of the corner. Su Chuan lowered the muzzle slightly, although it appeared to be all corpses. However, no matter how careful he was at this time, he stopped not far away to observe and confirm that there were indeed no living people before moving forward again. "Bell, someone is coming down the stairwell," Berkshaw's voice echoed through his headphones. "Got it," Su Chuan quickly replied, squatting down and wiping a handful of blood from the ground, then skillfully wiping it on his own body. He then dragged up an intact body, pretending to rescue the wounded while shouting loudly in local language at the 4 people rushing out of the stairwell, "Help me, the enemy has attacked us." These armed personnel looked at Su Chuan's bloodstains all over his body without any suspicion. They looked at their comrades lying on the ground and quickly ran over. Su Chuan struggled to drag a corpse, and one of the armed personnel quickly carried a gun on his back to help. The other 3 quickly came forward to inspect the other corpses. Su Chuan pretended to be injured and broke free, staggering to hand over the body to his companions, and retreated 2 steps to the right to make way out of the shooting range. With ease, he picked up his rifle and pulled the trigger, firing all the remaining bullets from the magazine. At such a close distance, it was basically no different from shooting for Su Chuan. 4 targets fell in response. Su Chuan first changed the magazine, then added a bullet to each person's head, and then added 2 new magazines from a corpse. He quickly flashed into the stairwell. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8, 1. At 8:30 a.m. local time on May 11, Yemen, Aden Port, report to the captain, "The Yemeni government has approved our ship's entry into Aden Port," said the tense and orderly busyness inside the naval bridge captain. "The entire ship has entered Level 2 combat deployment. Yes, there are a large number of Chinese immigrants gathered in the port of Aden, and some consulate staff are doing their best to comfort everyone. Please be patient, everyone. Our navy is already waiting for entry into the open sea and will soon pick you up and take you home." As he spoke, he shouted loudly, "Our warship is here." A huge warship slowly approached in the distance, and the national flag fluttered in the wind. The port was boiling, and everyone's worries and fears had turned into excited emotions. Even the consulate staff breathed a sigh of relief. "Everyone, don't be chaotic, maintain order, don't be chaotic." Although they are also very excited, they still have work to do. "Everyone, take your luggage, take your passport, and don't mess around." The ship slowly docked, set up the escalator, and first got off the ship with 20 fully armed special operations personnel, entering the port to establish a safe zone. Subsequently, the crew on the ship established a safe passage, conducted security checks and identity screening, and everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. "Captain, there has been a change in the situation in Yemen. The president of Yemen has been kidnapped by rebels, and now Secretary General Mohammed has taken over the state affairs." Mohammed has requested that we protect his family and leave our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His superiors have agreed and instructed our ship to take responsibility. I understand, I'll adjust the deployment. In the Consulate General of Aden, Consul He, the Navy has entered the port. He Qin Lu. Is the convoy ready? The convoy has arrived. Great, let's hurry up and leave. Everyone quickly pack your luggage and set off immediately. Everyone was busy and nervous, and there was a figure standing at the window, sideways observing the outside. He Qin Lu looked at the person in front of him, a woman wearing a black combat uniform, and approached, saying, "Comrade Luo Jiaoling, we are about to evacuate." The person turned around with a slightly delicate face and shoulder-length hair, which really didn't match the impression of a soldier. He Qin Lu thought to himself, who would have thought that this is the highest person in charge of intelligence work in the local area. It feels like he's not much older than my daughter. The evacuation process may not go smoothly, he said and looked out the window. He Qin Lu also looked out the window. There was a convoy provided by the Yemeni government army and military personnel escorting them, but he didn't see anything. Is there any problem? Forget it, the arrow is on the string. There's nothing I can do. I'll escort you to the port first. Can we contact the LY ship now? Sure, the contact has been established. Is there anything I can do? Contact the Navy, I have some information to communicate with them. Good, report to the captain, the phone number of the Aden consulate, bring it in, is that Consul He? I'm Captain Gao Yun. Hello Captain Gao, I have a situation I want to tell you, He Qin Lu said. Just as Gao Yun was about to answer, another voice came. Captain Gao, I am the intelligence officer Luo Jiaoling. Please prepare your special forces team. The consulate's convoy is likely to be attacked on the way. What are you saying? Gao Yun stood up, and Zhao Haiguang beside him also paid attention. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9, 2. You should have received the news that the government will provide shelter for Mohadi's family, and this news will definitely stimulate the rebels' nerves. Consulate personnel are the best bargaining chip, and there may be rebels in the government army escorting the convoy. Can you confirm? Of course, it's also because there are other sources of intelligence, and I can be certain that the rebels are plotting a convoy. I need you to be prepared and ready to support at any time, as the government army cannot be relied on. Gao Yun glanced at Zhao Haiguang, who nodded and replied, I understand. I will immediately deploy the battle and be ready to receive you at any time. After hanging up the phone, Zhao Haiguang said, let Yang Rui prepare first. In the consulate after hanging up the phone, He Qin Lu nervously asked, will something really happen? Don't be so nervous, as long as the rebels want to catch alive, we have room for maneuver and wait for the Navy's support. Luo Jiaoling turned her head to look at Dr. Lu, who was coaxing her child and constantly dialing the phone, and smiled. And maybe we'll have foreign aid. Departing, all personnel get on the train. Luo Jiaoling sat in the passenger seat of the commercial vehicle, slowly exiting the merging convoy. She turned her head and glanced in the rearview mirror at a government soldier standing at the rear intersection, holding his phone and saying something. Looking back at the accompanying guard, although it was just a glance, the guard had understood her meaning and the rifle in his hand had opened the safety. The government army's vehicles are distributed in front and behind the convoy, and sporadic gunshots and explosions can already be heard in the distance. The government army and rebels have engaged in fire in important areas of the airport and city. According to the plan, the convoy will bypass the combat area, but the rebels are unlikely to give them a chance. Bomb! The military vehicle ahead had already been blown away by the IED, and the driver suddenly braked to stop. Don't stop, rush over, another military vehicle quickly replenished its position ahead. They want to force us into the theater, turn right on the path ahead, enter the factory area, and let the car of the overseas Chinese behind come to the front. Luo Jiaoling said calmly, Consul He, contact the Navy immediately. The convoy entered the factory area, and the warring factory had been reduced to ruins for days. Rebel armed personnel from behind had already followed suit. Get off the car, establish a defense line, and cover the entry of overseas Chinese into the factory. General Sharif, Chinese expatriates and consuls entering the factory area, we must catch them. These people will be bargaining chips for us to negotiate with the Chinese government. General Sharif, the rebel leader, did not know if he had no chance to realize his ideals. A tall figure leaned over from behind, his right hand covering his mouth, and his left hand's military knife had already pierced his heart from behind. The body slid to the ground, and all the guards outside the door have been taken care of. Yuri, it's solved. A Russian walked in, his eyes different from ordinary people, one blue and one green. He asked while holding the phone, the people who were loyal to Sharif have all been washed away. He kicked the body on the ground. Let's forget what we said here, with a hint of mockery in his tone. ALSD's people raided Green Valley Energy and have already captured William Boson. These fools almost ran away by him. Yes, ALSD has already passed and he will ask where the goods are. Understood, hung up the phone. It went smoothly, didn't it, Yuri? It's almost successful. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10, 3, Navy LY Ship, Report, Captain. Captain Gao Yun picked up the phone and dialed the helicopter hangar, where members of the Navy's assault team were on standby. Report, I am Yang Rui, just received a distress call from Consul He Qing Lu. They and the last group of overseas Chinese were attacked by rebels on the way out. The Yemeni government army is no longer able to provide rescue, but they have allowed our troops to enter the city to rescue people and provide transportation support at the port. Yes, the fully armed assault team members, led by the Yemeni government army, entered the theater of war in military vehicles. This is a 3-story brick and concrete structure building. Take the overseas Chinese upstairs, and divide them into 3 groups to establish a defense line. Use the terrain here to block the enemy. Yang Zi, you have the best shooting skills, go to the roof. A guard quickly assigned a task, Comrade Luo Jiaoling, the safety of He Lingshi and others will be entrusted to you. Understood, this is up to you. Luo Jiaoling knew it was not the time to argue and turned around to take the overseas Chinese upstairs to hide. Captain, the rebel car has come in, Yang Zi, who had already run to the rooftop, said on the walkie-talkie. 4 trucks, about 50 people, all equipped with light weapons, at least 5 with 40 fires, 2 vehicles equipped with machine guns, 1 Deshka, and 1 dual MG3. Damn it, Captain Wu Xiaobo scolded fiercely. Yang Zi, find a way to take down the machine gun, but don't force it. The walls and eaves here can't stop the machine gun bullets at all. Understood, Captain, brothers, this time it's a bit troublesome, but fortunately the Navy will come to support us later. What we need to do is try to delay the time as much as possible. Captain, don't worry, we won't let those Navy people laugh at us. A cheerful voice came from the walkie-talkie. Fart it, that's the brothers' army, Captain, they're coming in. Yang Zi is hiding behind the ventilation duct on the roof. 2 smoke bombs, let some people in. Understood, end of this chapter.